It's February 1st, 2015. We're here with Bill Prince. Bill, where were you born?
North Carolina, a big city called Albemarle. But I was raised in Detroit. So I claim Detroit as my home, original home.
All right. When did you decide to become a musician?
Well, my father was a musician, and I had two uncles who were musicians. My mother played piano and sang and all of that. And to me, I would say roughly in about the 8th grade, I made, not the 8th grade, when I was about 8 years old, I had started playing trumpet, and I frankly never thought of any other way of going through life. Just music became automatic to me. So I could trace it back that far.
Where did you go to college?
In Detroit at Wayne State University. There's a little history behind that. In order not to go into the Army, which was automatic then for a male, you had to go to college. And that was one of the encouraging reasons for me to attend Wayne State, because it kept me out of the draft, out of the Army. And it was peacetime, so there were no real issues at the time. During my senior year, now I'm already a musician because I played during my whole college career around Detroit. There was a lot of opportunity. And if I can go beyond the question here, I became, people began to notice that I could play okay, and the phone started to ring. And in my senior year of college, I actually went on the road, first with a Dixieland band, Pee Wee Hunt band, and spent the whole summer with him. Came back and went back to school. I still had a semester to go, but then I had an offer to go with a show band, Gabe Garland Review, which was, they were on their way to Europe. Went to my draft board, said, hey, I have a chance to go to Europe. If I go, you'll draft me. They said, no, fine, go, have a good time. So I did. So I effectively dropped out of school for over 6 months in the senior year. Boy, that is a dangerous thing to do. So I came back from Europe and re-enrolled in school. I did finish up, and then I did have to go into the military. But by that time, pretty much a new band had formed called the NORAD Band. It was run by the Air Force, but it included Army, Navy, and Royal Canadian Air Force. So select musicians, and they came to the Michigan State Fair. I made my contact. The audition was to sit in the band and play some concerts, which I did, and I did. By this time, I was okay on trumpet, I was okay on the flute, and okay on the clarinet. And I sat in each section, and being smart, I know when I see a flurry of notes coming up, I just pretend to play. And then the people around me don't hear anything wrong. So that's a little tip there. So I entered the NORAD Band and signed on the dotted line, did 3 years, wonderful years. And what did we do but played everywhere.
Wow. Well, thank you for your service.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for the great opportunity.
Well, how did you end up in Florida?
After leaving the NORAD Band, I joined the Billy Maxted Band. It was actually called Billy Maxted and his Manhattan Jazz Band. It was just a name. But it was sort of a Dixieland band, but it was a super group. We traveled mostly in the East, and we would spend the winter months in Fort Lauderdale. And I became very comfortable with that idea and made friends in Florida, during those two winters that I spent down there. And I made my decision to move from Michigan down to Florida, which I did in 1967.
Wow. I understand you also played with the Buddy Rich Band.
That came after I had moved to Florida. The phone still rang, and by now, and as a result of having been in the military, with so many wonderful musicians, now you're networked. And the phone rang. I had offers to go with Stan Kenton, Woody Herman, other bands, Big Tiny Little, and Buddy Rich. But it actually called 3 times. The first 2 times was to play saxophone, and the last time was to play trumpet, which I did. I ended up being a jazz trumpet player on the Mercy Mercy album, which is still available.
Mm-hmm. Well, how did you get from being a performing musician into teaching?
I've always had an inkling towards education, learning things, I'll say it that way. So when I was in Fort Lauderdale for the winter months, Florida Atlantic University, which at that time was a very brand new school, I enrolled in their graduate program, music supervision or something like that. So I got to meet the faculty there, and I arranged for the Billy Maxted band, the band I was playing with, to come and actually do a concert on the campus, which we did. And part of that was, of course, showing me off, and so I played the trumpet, the trombone, the flute, the clarinet, the saxophone, and etc. Well, the faculty, all two of them, said, well, this school, FAU, is growing. We need somebody who can help us out. And so they hired me. They actually offered me a job. Upon graduation, they offered me a job to teach there, and that was in 1968, and I've never looked back. That was the smartest move I ever took. In the meantime, actually after that is when I went with the Buddy Rich Band, but I knew when I joined Buddy that I had to leave at a certain time. Mm-hmm. And so I was there for 6 months. Then started at FAU, and it was like a whole new world.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Well, what challenges did you encounter?
Well, as a teacher, quite a few, because one of my responsibilities was developing the jazz band. Well, we had very few students at first, and so I could only rehearse one night a week, and I'd have to bring in high school students to fill out the band. Which paid a lot of dividends because there were some super high school students around that area. I had Duffy Jackson playing drums, Danny Salmation playing saxophone, Mark Sorrells playing trumpet, and Bobby Conomo came in on drummer. And these people became really respected musicians. Well, my drawing card was the fact that I had played with Buddy Rich, and that this album was now out there, so that became a tremendous help in gathering students. During the first year, I put together a recital along with a piano playing friend, Dave Solzinski, and the recital we put together was mostly classical music, and then we would do some jazz at the end of the program. So we went to the junior colleges, Palm Beach Junior College, Broward Junior College, and Miami-Dade Junior College. Those are the three feeder schools. And we'd put these concerts on. And the way it went was I would play a classical piece on clarinet, a classical piece on saxophone, something on flute, and then something on trumpet, and then do the jazz at the end, as I said. Well, I became a bit of a Pied Piper, so the next year, the student body at FAU tripled. All these kids now, they said that they want to go there. We started competing with the bigger schools. And especially if we have kids living locally who can't afford, to go out of town. So we would get them for sure. So that program started to develop and grow. And it became a wonderful experience. So the problem, but now getting this band, the jazz band, off the ground, the main problem was the band, the level of musicianship within the band was all over the place. I mean, I had some really good players, some really not so good players. So I ended up having to write most of the music that we could perform. And what I did on Friday, we had no classes on Friday at that time, so I found a room at the university, a big round table, and I would create scores and assemble a number of the students, and we'd each copy different parts. Oh. And by the end of that, we'd have 4 new charts, that were written for them. Mm-hmm. So that's the way we built our library at the beginning, and the comments from people hearing our concerts was, "Gee, your band always sounds so good." Of course, it's all hand-carved stuff,
mm-hmm. And this was all handwritten manuscript. This was in
right.
the days before Finale.
Very much so. All pencil and paper, mm-hmm. pen and ink, right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that was the main problem getting started. And I'm going to throw this out there. One of the issues I had to face was the fact that here we got this new jazz program going on, and as the department developed, I was the only jazzer, and there was kind of a view from my colleagues. Well, he's a jazzer. What does he know about Beethoven or Mozart? And consequently, I would try to recruit students all the time. Scholarship money was denied to the jazz majors.
Oh.
Yeah. So I said, okay, I'll deal with that. I found a club in Boca Raton. We went and played Sunday concerts there, and they gave us the door plus extra money, and we raised a ton of money. And I said, okay, this is my money now, and I controlled all the scholarship money that went out to the jazz majors. And then finally, of course, most of our students were jazz majors because of all this recruiting. And then finally, I went to the department, you know, in a meeting. I said, you know, you've got to stop this. This is ridiculous, you know. And from that day forward, you know, now they could tap into the regular scholarship sources. But that was an issue.
Yeah. Another prove yourself.
Prove yourself, yeah. But we did.
Okay. You talked about recruiting. How important is recruiting?
Well, at FAU, it was super important. It never stopped. And I found myself taking groups out to play at high schools and wherever I could get them in, to be honest. And usually on Fridays, because that was always the lightest day. And I would call the band directors, say, hey, we'd like to bring our group over to play for you. And paid huge dividends because I get to know the band directors. And they get to become acquainted with what we were doing and, you know, the quality of our program. Mm-hmm. And then when I moved up to University of North Florida, it was more of the same. We had to recruit our tails off to get that program going, which we did. And now it's a, you know, an internationally respected jazz program.
Mm-hmm. And I understand there's a bit of a story about you going there originally.
Oh dear, yes. Rich Madison, who was teaching at North Texas State University, an incredible musician and performer and writer, everything. He had everything going. And his main instrument, believe it or not, was euphonium. Now, how many jazz euphonium players have you heard of? But boy, he was one. And he had a magic personality. He knew how to recruit. And his thing was mostly at the national level because he traveled the country for Yamaha at that time, and he would meet kids everywhere, tell them about this new program in Jacksonville, and I was more in Florida, you know, so I kind of worked the Florida turf, and our first year of operation, we had 34 brand new students, most of them from out of state, and that would. Prior to that, we went to the administration at UNF, and he said, "Now look, we need a lot of scholarship money to start this program," and they gave us the whole ball and wax for that year, everything that they had, and it worked. It worked. It got the program started. We had marvelous young musicians, and then that program now is just an historical success.
Mm-hmm. Well, in your career, can you talk about some pivotal moments?
Probably the most important thing for me was going on a show band. Back in 1960, it was the Gabe Garland Review. And I learned from this, what did we do? We entertained people. And this was the band I went to Europe with. We spent 2 months in Europe. And I realized it's not just about how I play. It's about communicating, you know, with that audience and entertaining them. So I became very entrapped by the entertainment side of this. And then in my 3 years in the military, what did we do? We played everywhere, but we entertained, you know, connected with the audiences. We didn't just play for ourselves, we were playing for them. Well, I took that attitude with me into the classroom, and quite honestly, I look at a classroom, I see them as the audience. And I try to loosen them up and get their attention, entertain them in a sense, and then I can teach them something, and show them different things. So that's been a big part of my background, the entertainment background. I'm still entertaining.
I agree. You're very entertaining. How about words of wisdom or advice to pass on to future directors, young directors, and those who have been teaching for quite a while?
Well, the first thing, lead by example. If you can't do it, don't expect them to be able to do it. And the good advice was given to me at the very beginning of my career by Dr. Ken Robinson. He said, look, you teach people, not necessarily music. And I pull that up every now and then. You're teaching people. And I have to remind myself, because sometimes I just get caught up in the music end of it and let that be the ball and wax. But it is the people. Other advice, know your subject. Listen to your students. Get some feedback and go for that. Make friends with your colleagues. And I really would stress that as much as possible, because I've had a lot of battles, as I already mentioned, just because I'm a jazzer or seen as a jazzer. Some people kind of don't want to know you, but you have to win them over, and that's just a fact of life. And we've run into a series of deans at University of North Florida. I mean, it's like a revolving door. And each time we get a new dean, we have to educate them. And you have to be friendly and all that sort of stuff. And also avoid divisiveness as much as you possibly can. Try not to separate, one person against another or any of that kind of stuff. I really try to avoid that.
Well, let's talk about your personal character traits now. What has helped you?
I have the ability to focus on things and take a task and do it and get it done. And the way I tend to work, I know if I'm writing an arrangement, if I start an arrangement, I like to also finish it in the same sitting, rather than start it and then come back to it tomorrow, because by then my thoughts have changed. So I have that ability anyway to focus and get it done. I have good, strong self-discipline, and I have the ability to pigeonhole things. So I try not to confuse this item with that item. For instance, in our music departments, it's inevitable you're going to be encountering your colleagues off campus. If you're a musician, you're going to play in the same groups and things, and you might have a problem in a group. Don't bring that to school. So I pigeonhole that. That's the thing over there, and what we do at school, that's a whole nother thing, and I don't let that one cross into the other. So that's been anyway, I'm able to do that. And I never let the students know about a problem. If there's a problem, and there always are, I don't bring the students in on it. And to me, that's divisive.
Mm-hmm. And something else I've noticed is that you keep your promises. If you say you're going to do it, it gets done.
I try. I do try. Yeah, if I say I'm going to do something, do it and follow through and get it done. Yeah, thank you.
Well, what concepts did you instill in your students that allowed them to produce quality music?
Well, I taught music business classes a number of times, and also other courses related to preparing one for the real world that's out there. Dress appropriately. I have to admit, sometimes when I see, I'll say it this way: at the last convention, the FMEA, I went in to help work with the jazz band, the All-State Jazz Band. I was wearing a coat and a tie. I was dressed for business, and and I like that. I think that immediately you command a little bit of respect, from looking that way. Or, and I'm not saying you have to wear a coat and tie, but you need to dress appropriately. Be on time. I hate being late. People accuse me of showing up too early. That's okay. Take care of business. If you say you're going to do something, do it. Be nice. But that pays big dividends. You'll get a lot done. be respectful. It's not just your world. It's everybody. Everybody has their world, and you have to respect that. Help others. This is a big item. I would not be where I am if it weren't for the help I've received from all kinds of people along the way. People have, I mean, it could be any number of items. You know, fingering for a note or something to do with your embouchure. You know, and help others out. I help them load their equipment. I still do it. Things like that. And if you're going to be a performer of any type, you do have to stay in shape. Practice, take care of your health, and all that kind of thing.
Well, I want to back up just a little bit. You mentioned that rather than having, although you had quality instruction in your training years, you didn't really have a master teacher.
No.
And what did you do instead of that?
My teachers, well, originally in Detroit, back in high school days, my best teachers were my friends, who we were all into music. There were maybe 5 of us. We all somehow figured out how to write it and arrange it. Of course, we all played, and we borrowed each other's instruments. This is where I actually learned how to double so much. My buddy was a saxophone player. So, "Hey, how do you do that?" And boom, and he showed me, and next thing you know, I bought a saxophone. I learned more from my buddies than I ever did from a teacher. I hate to say it that way, but it's the truth. And then going through my life, I watched as a professional player. Now I'm standing next to other musicians, you know, other trumpet players, saxophone players. I'd make a little study of them. If they were successful players, I'd say, gee, looking at the embouchure, I'll ask questions. I've had tremendous helps along the way. But again, I've learned and I did study privately, of course, with different teachers. But I learned more from those people who were actually out there doing it. Yeah. Great.
Well, how did you keep your edge all those years?
I played a lot. I never stopped playing. See, that was the first thing. And I've been lucky in that I've lived in areas where there was ample opportunity to perform. So I do that. I like to write, and sometimes I just write for the sake of writing because it brings me enjoyment. It may not ever get played, but I do it. That helps me keep the edge. And I've been writing, of course, I always when I was teaching, I always had somebody to write for anyway. Kept that up, but now this will lead probably to your next question about how do you keep it going in retirement.
Absolutely.
More of the same. I still practice, I perform, I write, and I like to go to concerts. You know, all of the above. In it all, I'm just very interested in it. Yeah.
And you mentioned that you had learned from all levels of performance, from listening to middle school bands, listening to struggling programs, listening to quite polished programs. Yeah. How can that be?
Why not? I love listening to school bands perform. I really do. And I've heard the best bands perform, you know, and I've heard the not so great bands, but it's not about that. You know, it's about them putting themselves into the music and making something out of it. And they may not even know, you know, what's going into it, but you know, they're lighting the tree, so to speak. Mm-hmm. I enjoy that. I get off on their energy.
Well, if someone has a struggling program, incomplete instrumentation,
I've been there.
Great variation in ability. Mm-hmm. How can they instill energy into a program like that?
Well, now I can only speak at the college level because that's where my teaching experience is, and I've already talked about that. Well, I led by example. Writing the charts to fit the band, that was really one of the key reasons our programs were so successful at the beginning. But even the students, and I just do it. I'm one of those. I just do it. I really didn't know how I was impacting the students necessarily, but I've had a number of them tell me over the years that we've watched you, you know, and you get things done. Do it. So they want to do the same thing, you know. So that's leading by example, I would say.
All right.
But I think I drifted. Anyway, go ahead.
No, you didn't at all. We only have a few minutes left, but I'd like you to tell us about choosing life in music.
Okay, music has been everything to me. I'll try to sum it up here. Actually, I have two passions in life. One is music, the other is travel. And I've been really lucky in that I've been able to marry the two. I put together, well, I've played everywhere. I've been to 81 countries. I put together a cruise ship act. Again, now back to the show business thing. And about 13, 14 years ago, and I got myself booked on certain cruise lines, went out, polished it up, and I've been doing this now ever since. And it was always summer months because I was teaching, you know. So every summer I'm off to Europe. Jump on a boat or several boats. You don't do one for a while, then you go to another. And all of this is, I'm getting paid very well to do that kind of thing. You go out and you entertain the people. See, that's that part again. I don't go out there to wow them with my abilities, but I programmed it, you know, so that I get them singing with me and doing all kinds of things. So using music, the music has been my ticket. And again, it's got me everywhere. I've been to all 50 states. Again, I mentioned 81 countries. I've toured a lot. I've tagged along with some high school bands that take trips to Europe or Asia. Hey, you got a spot? I'll go. And sometimes I'll be your soloist if you want one, or I'll just pay the rent and go and enjoy the trip. I like doing that. So anyway, life in music for me has been absolutely astounding. It truly has. It's been incredible, and it's still going on. So,
and
yeah.
You never wished you had done something else?
Never. Absolutely not. Wouldn't
Wow.
trade it for anything.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, I want to thank you so much for giving us your time and telling us your wonderful stories and taking us on the journey with you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Time to go.
Time to go. Bye-bye.